Good morning, everyone. This is day 4 of our sourdough, and here is this lovely bubbly mess. And you can see from our yesterday's mark that it did grow. I actually did feed it again last night because it was starting to collapse, and we didn't want to have the same problem we had yesterday where we had it starving. So today we're going to go back to what we would have done before. I'm going to measure out just 50 grams of this, and then we're going to add 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour and get this baby a lot more sour. So I have another jar because it just makes it easier. And since I have way too many half-gallon canning jars, doesn't everybody? I am simply going to stir this, make sure we get all the lovely sourness together, and I'm going to pour in 50 grams. And that is 50 grams. Just that little bit. So we are then going to add 50 grams of water. Which, as we discovered before, is about 1.5 ounces. And then 50 grams of flour. Oh. Really trying to be, not overdo it. All right. I'll take my lovely, decided I really don't like Handy Dandy. It's just not doing it for me. And my son-in-law said I definitely need a catchphrase or maybe a item, something that I always just have. And his suggestion was a mug with tea in it, since I drink a lot of tea. I do like my tea, and I have a lot of different types of tea. So we're going to see if that might become my thing. One never knows. So here we are, way back down again. Oh, didn't really scrape the one side, did I? There we go. And sourdough is really quite like glue, which is, so when it starts to dry, it is very hard. What was I going to do? Oh, mark it. I'm going to mark where we're at. And Weston has decided to wake up. We saw someone walking down the road with the dog. And there we go. Day 4, trying to make this sourdough nice and sour. So yesterday I said I was going to make biscuits. Weston, stop it. And, well, I never got around to it. So today we're going to make biscuits. I have had my spare sourdough sitting out ready to go, and last night I looked at it and it was starving too, so I fed it a little bit. So I have just enough to give it some food and loving. So one thing about biscuits that is great is you need a very hot oven. So my oven is currently preheating at 425. And you need cold butter because you want little pieces of butter in your biscuits so when they bake up nice and fast, those pockets will be all nice and buttery. And as we know, butter is where it's at. So we need 1 cup of flour because I'm not making a huge batch of biscuits. So I have this lovely scoop measuring, and I discovered I have like 6 different sets of measuring spoons. I like my scoop though because I can scoop it in. So 1 cup of flour and 1/4 teaspoon. I also have like 8 of measuring spoons. So usually I don't measure. I just kind of pinch and go, but I thought I would measure today. And since I already have the 1/4 dirty. I need 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, so 1/4 plus 1/4. Weston, stop it. Is 1/2. And then baking soda, you need 2 teaspoons. And I actually have a spoon that measures 2 teaspoons. How great is that? So I plop that in there. And hold on, I gotta let John in the house. All right, I'm back. I let John in the house. He had locked the door and he left early this morning, and I never opened it up. So I'm going to take a whisk, and I'm just going to whisk together our salt and our baking soda and our baking powder. And you do that because you don't want one little pocket of something and then you bite into your biscuit and all you taste is salt. All right, all mixed together. Oh, there's the beeping, which means my oven is ready. And I'll get my favorite spatula. Nope, I do not want my sourdough yet. I want butter. So, nice cold butter, 1/3 cup of nice cold butter, and I've already cut it into little squares because it makes it easier to mix in. And then I have a pastry cutter, which allows you to push it into the flour and make it so that those pieces of butter get coated with flour and then also are smaller so that they can spread out in the biscuits. So I never even made anything to go with the biscuits yesterday. We ate leftovers. So I was not productive at all. So, since my son-in-law thinks that I need something like my tea with my mugs, I got my cup of tea here, and I have this lovely mug, and it's the trifecta of mugs. It's a mug, it says tea, and it's green. It couldn't be more perfect than that, and one of my first students got that for me one year for Christmas, which was very nice of her. So, and I use it all the time because it is the trifecta of tea mugs. So, here is my flour, and it has little bits of the butter that I don't want to mush in. I don't want it to be completely mixed in. I want these little pieces of butter to stay. And now, usually with biscuits, you're going to add a liquid. So you can add milk, you can add cream, you can add buttermilk, sour milk, heavy cream, something that gives it, obviously, the liquid to hold all the flour and butter together. And we're going to use sourdough to do that. Oh. So I'm going to just mix this all in, but I don't want to mix it a lot. I don't want that butter to start to mix in. I don't want it to start blending. I want to leave as much of those butter squares, butter pieces, but I also need all the flour to get mixed up into my sourdough. So sometimes that means that you have to get your fingers in there and do it. So when I do it with my fingers, I make sure that I'm not mixing really, I'm not pulling it all together. I want it to, so it actually, my sourdough is a little on the heavy side, which means it is not mixing all together, so I need some milk. And I don't have milk, but I have half and half, which is as good as milk. And I'm going to just add some so I can get this to mix together, because I need all that flour to be holding together. Sometimes, especially with sourdough, you just have to play with it. Sometimes sourdough will get not as thick, it'll be a little runnier, and other times it will be thicker, like this one happens to be. So I need to add some liquid so I can make sure that all that flour and baking soda and salt all get mixed in, because if I don't, then my biscuits won't rise. So, I'm trying to be very gentle because I don't want my butter to become all mushed in, which is one of the reasons you use cold butter, because the colder it is, the harder it will be to mix in. So, that's good. And of course I have my nice wet towel here, so I can wash all that off without having to go to the sink. So, there it is, all wet and mixed together. And then we're going to pat it out. We're not going to roll it out. Again, that's going to cause I move all my stuff. That's going to cause the butter to mush in some more. And so I have this lovely silicone sheet that I roll or pat out anything I do with dough, because my countertop here is old barn board and has lots of little crevices and stuff, and the flour gets into those and it's hard to clean it out. So I use this instead. So I lightly have some flour on there, not a lot. And then I put my biscuit batter right on there, and I'm going to pat it out. So I want it to don't want to make a lot of biscuits because it's only John and I. And that means if we don't eat them, Weston will get them. Even though he likes it when I make a lot of biscuits. So I want the dough to be patted out and be about an inch thick. And it's not imperative that it's perfect, but you don't want it to be too thin because then it makes too thin of a biscuit and it dries out. So here's my dough. And I don't know if you can see, but there's still pieces of butter that didn't get all blended in, which is perfect. And then we need a biscuit cutter. So I found this antique biscuit cutter. And usually I don't really cut the biscuits. I just kind of scoop and push in. But we're also going to use my cast iron pan to bake. So this is what they used to use all the time to bake. When the pioneers went out west, when the cowboys were ranching and whatnot, and they were out overnight, this is what they would use to cook their food. And they would have bowls. I have actual pots that have handles so they could hang them over the fire. But cast iron pans are great, and I love mine, and I've had this one for probably over 30 years, so now I'm dating myself. But you have to take care of it or it will get rusty. So I never actually just go in and wash this and let it dry the way that we would wash other pans. If it does have stuff that's on it, I'll wash it, but then you have to dry it really, really well. Sometimes I'll put it right on the stove so that the stove will dry it. It gets heated up. Don't touch it because it is very hot. So that's what we're going to use to bake my biscuits. So my lovely, there it is. And then and I buttered my pan. A lot of times the cast iron pans will have a natural non-sticking, but I want to make sure that these don't stick. So I buttered the pan in case. And then I'm putting my biscuits. They don't have to be perfect, but I want to not have to pat out my dough too much because I don't want it to get too tough. We want the biscuits to be able to be nice and fluffy and buttery because, well, that's the way it is. So put them in there. Then I have a little bit of dough left, not a lot. So I'm just going to gently pat that back together so I can make another biscuit. And sometimes you won't have enough to make a whole biscuit, and you can just put that little piece in there, and then you have, this weird shaped. It won't be perfect, but hey, it'll taste just as good. I think I can get one more. And I'm not even going to, I'm just going to form it. Just enough for one more. So you put them in your pan. You want them kind of touching each other. The middle one is probably the one that's going to be touching the least. So there are my biscuits. My oven is all ready, so I'm going to put it in my oven. My oven is 425 degrees hot, And these are only going to bake for about 10 minutes because that's all it's going to take. We're baking them nice and fast. They're going to get up. They want to stay nice and moist and fluffy. And then we'll eat our lovely biscuits. So after they are done baking, I will come back and show them to you. Okay, so it took 10 minutes to bake them. And while I was baking, I went and cleaned everything up because a good cook always cleans up her mess. So here they are, all nice and high, doubled in height. And you see all those nice little pockets there? That is all that butter that melted and left space. So then it allows you to put even more butter when you eat them. And see how nice and golden it is on the bottom? And these are going to taste so good. Now, because they're done, you don't want to leave them in the pan. The pan is very hot. I had to use double because it is very, very hot. And probably I should use tongs or something, but my fingers have no feeling, except for that little bit. And this is the one that I didn't cut perfectly. So that's the one I like the best. So here's my pan. All I'm going to do is take a paper towel and clean it out and let it cool down because nothing has stuck to it. There's no little pieces except these dry crumbs that'll come right out. And let it cool down, and then it's ready to go the next time I want to use it. I love using it to make cornbread. So, biscuits. There, I finally made them, and now I have to make something to go with them for dinner because we now have them. 3, 6, 9. I have 3 rows of 3. 3 times 3 is 9. You're welcome, Miss Towel. There is my tea mug, green. Says tea, has tea in it. Can't be any better than that. We'll see you next time. Bye. I'm back. You thought you got rid of me. I forgot to break one open so you could see the inside. See? Nice and fluffy. Can you see the steam coming off of it? I can. I don't know if you can. But this is the one I'm going to eat as soon as I'm done here. And I load it up with lots of butter.